This team can find a way to get it done. And right now, we're going into this finals with a legitimate shot to capture the world championship. I'm ecstatic. I think they got the personnel, the style of play to do it. And I'm not ruling out anything. We ain't gonna sit up here acting like the New York Knicks don't got shit. The Knicks going to the finals, it's finally been validated, and I think they could win.
Imagine this. It's the Eastern Conference Finals, Madison Square Garden, the mecca of basketball. But inside the arena, you could hear a pin drop. There are less than 8 minutes left on the clock in the fourth quarter, and the New York Knicks are staring down a massive, seemingly insurmountable 22-point deficit. The Cleveland Cavaliers have been treating the Garden like their own personal playground all night long. Every bounce of the ball feels like another dagger into the hearts of the New York faithful. If you had turned off your television at that exact moment, nobody on the planet would have blamed you. In fact, most people did. It looked like the classic, predictable New York heartbreak that basketball fans have grown accustomed to for nearly 3 decades. But then something shifted. Jalen Brunson refused to let the season end. What followed wasn't just a comeback. It was an absolute demolition. An unbelievable 18-1 scoring run blew the game wide open. With 19 seconds left, the game was tied. By the time the final buzzer echoed through the rafters, the Knicks had closed out the game on a mind-boggling 44-11 run, pulling off one of the statistically impossible comebacks in NBA playoff history. Make no mistake about it, this wasn't a fluke. This wasn't a stroke of good luck or a couple of friendly bounces from the rim. This was a statement of identity. This is the moment the world realized that these are not your older brother's New York Knicks. This isn't the team that broke your heart in the conference finals last year. This isn't the roster that ran out of gas and collapsed in 6 games against the Indiana Pacers. And this is absolutely not the dysfunctional franchise that spent the last 20 years spinning its wheels in the mud while the rest of the NBA passed them by. For the first time since 1999, a staggering 27 years, the New York Knicks have swept their way into the NBA Finals. Let that sink in for a moment. A full generation of New York fans who have never watched their team play June basketball are finally seeing their loyalty rewarded. To truly appreciate how monumental this moment is, we have to travel back and understand the dark places this franchise had to crawl out of. For the better part of the last decade, the Knicks were trapped in a very specific basketball purgatory. They were always just smart enough to construct a competitive regular season team, but never talented enough to actually threaten the elite contenders in May and June. Year after year, the script was exactly the same. Jalen Brunson would put the entire city of New York on his back, drag a banged-up, gritty roster into the postseason, and then immediately run face-first into a physical, tactical wall. We saw it happen against Indiana in 2024. We saw it happen again in 2025. It was a cycle of promising regular seasons that dissolved under the absolute pressure cooker of elite playoff defense. And let's be honest, the national media criticisms were loud, and they had data to back them up. The narrative was set in stone that Jalen Brunson is an incredible player, but he's a small guard, and you cannot win a championship in the modern NBA when your number one option is a 6'2" point guard. When the game slowed down, when the referees let the players get physical, and when teams forced New York into a half-court grind, the offense would completely stall out. They would overperform their talent through sheer hustle, but when they hit the second or third round, the talent deficit became glaringly obvious. They simply did not have enough answers on the board. But while the media was busy writing obituaries for the Brunson era, the Knicks front office was quietly drawing up a blueprint to rewrite the script entirely. The front office knew they couldn't stand still. They realized that hustle and grit can buy you a lot of love in New York, but it doesn't buy you a Larry O'Brien trophy. Before this historic season even tipped off, the master plan was set into motion. First, they swung a blockbuster trade to bring in Karl Anthony Towns from Minnesota. Then, they packaged assets to land the ultimate defensive Swiss Army knife, Mikal Bridges. But perhaps the most underrated stroke of genius was the hiring of Mike Brown as the new mastermind on the sidelines. Brown brought a resume that carried immense weight. This is a guy who constructed championship-level defensive schemes with the Golden State Warriors and built winning cultures out in Sacramento. He knew exactly how to maximize unique, non-traditional stars. The structural vision for this new-look roster was elegant in its simplicity. Step 1 was to build an elite, versatile defensive shell around Jalen Brunson. Step 2 was to provide him with lethal perimeter shooters. Step 3 was to introduce a modern floor-spacing center who could simultaneously protect the rim and pull opposing big men out of the paint. The concept was brilliant, but implementing it on the court was a completely different story. And early on, it looked like a total disaster. People are already forgetting this because the playoff run has been so magical, but this season almost fell apart at the seams. From December 31st through January 19th, the Knicks hit rock bottom. They went on a brutal, morale-crushing 2-11 stretch. The low point came just hours after team owner James Dolan went on WFAN radio and boldly proclaimed to the city that getting to the finals is the absolute expectation and winning the finals is what they should do. Immediately after that broadcast, the basketball gods humbled New York. The Knicks went out and suffered a humiliating 31-point blowout loss to the Detroit Pistons. At that time, Detroit was unexpectedly emerging as a legitimate problem in the Eastern Conference, and they seemed to have New York's number in every single matchup. Meanwhile, the Boston Celtics were dominating the league. Even with superstar Jason Tatum sidelined with a severe Achilles injury, knowing he'd return perfectly refreshed for the postseason. The media knives were out. The mainstream narrative practically wrote itself that Dolan was completely delusional. Brunson had officially hit his ceiling. Karl Anthony Towns was a regular season luxury that would soft out in the playoffs. And Mike Brown was a first-year New York coach who was completely underwater. But the elite teams don't panic during a January storm. They look at the big picture. And by the time April arrived, the Knicks had stabilized the ship, finishing with an impressive 53-29 record, locking up the third seed in the East. They didn't just survive the storm, they evolved because of it. So what clicked? How did this roster transform from a disjointed group of stars into a historically dominant unit? It started with the maturation of Jalen Brunson. During the regular season, Brunson was the undeniable heartbeat of the team, averaging 26 points and nearly 7 assists per game. But it wasn't the statistical volume that shocked opposing coaches, it was his psychological evolution. The old scouting report on Brunson stated that you could disrupt his rhythm if you threw length and physical traps at him in the half court. That scouting report is officially trash. Coach Mike Brown publicly compared Brunson's internal drive to legends like Stephen Curry and Tim Duncan, noting that his quiet, unshakable strength and unmatched work ethic set the tone for the entire organization. Brunson became a late-game assassin, a fourth-quarter tactician that opposing defenses simply could not solve. But the real catalyst for Brunson's liberation was the presence of Karl Anthony Towns. Cat put up an incredibly efficient 20.1 points and nearly 12 rebounds a night, but his true value cannot be measured by a standard box score. By operating as a legitimate 7-foot threat from beyond the three-point arc, Towns completely revolutionized the geometry of the Knicks' offense. Opposing rim protectors could no longer park themselves in the paint to wait for Brunson.